Former and current Chuck E. Cheese workers. What are some of the worst things to happen to you while working? One time at Chuck E. Cheese, when I was working there, some food fight broke out, and one kid chucked his entire cake straight at Chuck E. and he cried about how he didn't get a cake. The kid's mom went into the bathroom, and she was in there for a good 15 minutes. I went in there to ask what was up, and I saw her having a mental breakdown. Turns out she spent hours making that cake special for him, and it was all ruined in about 30 seconds. I was the technician at a Chuck E. Cheese in high school. One day I was covering someone, and I had to wear the suit and do the show. On my way back to the room, a little kid runs up to see Chuck E. and stabbed me in the ankle with a pencil as hard as he could. I rushed into the back room and took off the pants portion of the suit, pulled down my sock, and a bunch of blood poured out. Didn't even go home early. Boss just had me stand at the door. Thank you. Unnamed Chuck E. Cheese employee who saved naive, desperate for employment me by answering my question about employment with "You don't want to work here. You are a hero." Didn't happen to me, but somebody got stabbed. We actually hired a bouncer on our busiest days because we attracted the trashiest people. There was also a ton of sex in the Chuck E. closet. Hey, sir. Someone left a whole bunch of brownies in the sky crawl. They weren't brownies. Had a complaint that a kid was dipping toilet paper into a women's toilet then eating it. He was. Same kid beat me mercilessly while I was wearing the rat in hat suit while screaming "man in suit." The best was a complaint about the same kid eating from other families' tables. He was. And he looked them dead in the eyes while doing it. These were all different days. Oh wow. An AskReddit question I can actually answer. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese for a year in high school. It was the worst job I ever had. The absolute worst day was having to clean crap and vomit out of the sky tubes. 2 separate occasions. Several hours apart. I've never been the same since. The funniest thing, though, was the coworkers who had a threesome in the closet where we kept the Chuck E. costume. Guy asked me cover for him during closing and took 2 other coworkers into the closet and banged them. Thing is, there was a camera in that closet. That was the last time I ever saw all 3 of them. Former. Anytime a kid threw up in the ball pit was an especially horrible day. There were several instances during the 6 years I had worked there, but these times were quite memorable. There were 2 ways you could do this. One, a large, both sides opened, cardboard box to cordon off the affected area, saying it was a slow day and other kids weren't splashing all the balls around. We had very large netting bags so that you could gather all the balls and take them outside and they would be sprayed off. Or 2, if the spew was all up in the ball pit, then all the freaking balls had to be gathered, sprayed off, and the inside liner that held the balls had to be wiped down and cleaned. Only good thing about having to take out all the balls was that you could find some pretty good stuff that happened to be in people's pockets and fell out: money, pocket knives, and even rings. The worst part was wearing that rat suit after this. This one dude was in it. He took it serious and would get up on the prize tables and get the kids to chant "Chucky, Chucky." I could freaking hear it back in the kitchen over the noise and music. Dude was butt-ass naked in the suit, and he sweat outlet. I probably have hepatitis. Best part was taking the leftover pizza dough into the back lot after closing and having a 1v1 death match throwing softball-sized dough balls at each other's heads. Former employee of roughly 9 months. 1. Very old woman peeing on the carpet in the entrance while standing up. 2. Cleaning pee out of the sky tubes after a complaint that it got in a kid's eyes and he couldn't see. 3. Walking into the bathroom to find an abandoned pair of underwear with poop in it. Took everything I had to not throw up when throwing it away. 4. While in the Chuck E. suit, being asked by a large black man wearing all blue, "Why you got all that red on?" Cup. 5. Asking a mute girl if she wanted to put her candles on her cake and being told she can't talk by her parents. There were definitely many more less than enjoyable experiences, but these are the ones that stand out to me. Former manager checking in from like 10-15 years ago with a throwaway. I have a few worsts. I have divided them up below. Actual worst: the time a custody dispute carried into a birthday party for a 3-year-old. Multiple people had guns and knives. Someone actually fired at the mother, and someone else tried to cut the father. This caused a full-on riot resulting in a lockdown. Luckily we were very close to a police station and no one was seriously injured. Hilarious worst. 2 employees having sex in the Chuck E. close T, where employees could go change without being in the way of the kitchen, or in sight of the kids, while one was wearing the Chuck E. head. This was bad, because once the closet was unlocked/open you were in sight, and we had lots of horrified parents, and terrified children, and it was really hard to not laugh. Creepy worst, one of the animatronics failed and became possessed. We were about 2 weeks away from becoming a stage 2 store. Next level of upgrade/improvements including removing the animatronics, so they told us just to let it go and try to keep it in check. It sounded demonic, and would turn on at random. Like in the middle of a happy birthday song its head hit a point that it couldn't turn anymore, and got stuck moving a few inches back and forth, and then caught on fire while trying to demonically still sing. Sad worst, we all had to get background checks if we had not been employed for 30 days, because a manager in our district, but not our store, turned out to not be taking care of his dying mother for a month. He was actually in jail for a DUI. The area manager was concerned about what else they didn't know, because he had been with the company for like 25 years, and worked up from a cashier. They ran a background check, and he had multiple issues with the law. His family vacations were all timed with when he was in jail, and was a registered sex offender. Walked in on this 40-year-old man jerking off. Our eyes met, and we kind of just stared at one another. Most awkward 10 seconds of my life. So, to sum this thread up, ball pits are nasty, and you should watch out for crap and vomit in the high tubes. I worked at SEC as my first job. On more than one occasion kids went up to the sky netting, basically a bird nest made out of rope suspended in the air, and would take a crap. Naturally, since it was netting the crap would fall through and onto anyone who happened to be below. After this happened a few times we decided to move the carousel ride, which had a roof, under the bird nest so at least it would land on the roof and not someone's head. Cleaning puke out of the sky tubes. The smell was horrifying. Worked at SEC for nearly 2 years during high school and then again later for another year. The worst parts almost always had to do with the parents, of course. The one that sticks out in my head the most is the super wasted, very unattractive older woman who stuck her hands down the front of my pants. It was just after I started. I was 15 and spent the first few months there working the game room floor. This lady came up to me saying one of the machines was not giving out tickets and I needed to check it out for her. I sat down on the stool to open up the panel and check things out. During this time she began rubbing my back saying how cute I was and how much of a help I was being. It was about this time I realized she reeked of booze and was wasted. Next thing I knew one of her hands was down the front of my shorts and she had found the prize she was after. I quickly sprang up from my seat saying I had to get some tools from the back. I went and told the game's manager what happened. I'm not really sure what happened after that as I stayed in the back for a while. Next time I came back out she was gone thankfully. As a whole I look back at my time working there with fond memories. Our place was almost entirely staffed with high school or young college kids. Had a ton of great times there, and the pizza kicked ass, but yes, cleaning crap out of the sky tub sucks. Edit. Just remembered the craziest thing that ever happened while I worked there. Next door to us was the DMV, and one day a lady parked in the fire lane in front it to help her elderly passenger inside to find a seat. Well, in the time it took her to do that, a tow truck swooped in to tow her. This happened fairly frequently in our parking lot, so my coworker buddy and I got closer to the glass at the front of the store to watch the shenanigans. The tow truck backed right up to the car, lifted the front end, and started pulling away with it. As the towed car passed our windows we realized there were kids in the back seat. My buddy and I ran out the front doors of the store and started chasing after the guy screaming about the kids. We finally caught up to him in the back of the parking lot where he would usually secure the car to the truck before taking it back to the lot, and told him what he did. He just said oh crap, dropped the car and took off. At this point the mom of the kids had ran to where we were at, understandably, screaming about her babies. The cops were called, and since we knew which company the truck belonged, the tow truck driver eventually showed back up. Not sure how much trouble the driver actually got in. But the cops were telling us that the law states that tow truck drivers must verify there are no passengers in the car before doing a snatch and grab. Adrenaline was definitely pumping with me and my coworker for a while after that one. I have a good friend who used to work at Chuck E. Cheese. Him and his fellow co-workers conspired over the span of a few months to steal the various piece of the suit. They would claim that this part got ripped or some kid messed up this part and we had to throw it out until they had a full suit. For what reason, you ask? Literally just to take turns showing up to parties in the full suit to make a bunch of wasted people super stoked. I worked at one for several years. I didn't have extremely horrible things happen to me though. I was a game tech, which meant I would unclog tokens and perform minor repairs on games while also delivering pizza to tables and clean up. Things I can remember that did happen that were weird / funny were 1. Having to escort wasted people out of at closing. Cashiers would try to limit people's intake, but when others would buy for them, they could still get plastered. 2. Parents fighting over video games. Never had an issue with kids. It was always the parents wanting their little snowflakes to play on some game, usually skee ball. We were told not to try and break them up. Manager would just call the cops. So I would go over to them and say they could either leave or deal with the cops. They always left before the cops arrived. 3. Got hit with skee balls a few times when going up on the lanes to unclog a bull or fix something. Nothing major, but it got to the point of making eye contact with all the kids. Before going up with warnings, I would throw them back. 4. Riding the drink trays down the slide at closing time and getting up to some impressive speeds and sliding across the floor. 5. Cleaning out the tubes that run around the ceiling and finding crap and puke and stuff up there. 6. Seeing how dirty the bowl pit was. Seriously, don't let your kids go in there because they only get cleaned out like every few months, and if some kid pisses unless we got told we didn't know. 7. Cleaning up the massive mess some people leave after doing their DIY party. Found dirty diapers and all kinds of mess under the tables that made me question how they can live with themselves after making such a massive mess and just leaving it. 8. Not me but another person wearing the Chuck E. costume got groped by some MILF. Not that he complained, but I know that a few of the times it would be one of the female staff in the costume and could imagine it going down worse for the guest in that situation. 9. A tech replacing a broken cord in a game, and while lifting the tube / electronics holds it with the tube out and pressed against his thigh, it proceeds to discharge into his leg, leaving him in a fetal position and me laughing so hard I had to close the door to the repair room to stop laughing. 10. For a while I was emptying the tokens from all the games every Sunday. Would start out with clean nitrate gloves, and by the end of the day they would be a dull grey / gold color. I stopped trying to handle coins after doing gig and realizing how dirty most money is, especially stuff handled by those little walking waste dump children. Not my story, but my dad's. This was decades ago. He worked as the man in the suit, and all his friends knew it. He had this one friend, we can call him Gene, who liked to take things over the top. He was working and suddenly, my dad hears a roar. He turns to see his buddy Gene sprinting at him. Full speed, no stop in sight. Boom. My dad is on the ground, head off, and the only thing heard was the screams of young children. My dad got fired that day. This happened 15 years ago or so. I was designated to be the big cheese himself. A glorious honor, haha. And the fact that I was one of the only guys that worked there, which meant I was almost always the chosen one for that hot ass suit. This day our football team was having a party there, 10 or 12-year-olds or something. My manager knew what was going to happen. Point me though. My young naive brain only had innocent thoughts about making the children happy. Then the coach playfully tosses me a football, in my vision at least, so I actually caught it. It happened. A horde of 10-year-olds descended upon me in the cramped area between two long tables. Valiantly as I tried, these little demons proceeded to tackle me onto the ground. I thankfully didn't break anything, and I kept my head from falling off while being knocked around. But I was mad. As soon as they got off me, I got up and left to go to the back and take off the sec outfit. Another time, the same manager as the last story made me work off the clock but I was too young and dumb to document and report it. Former employee. 6 roughly months in high school. 1. A family racked up a ROUGHLY $300 bill and tried to pay for it with food stamps. 2. Two families got into a fight during their kid's birthday party and had to be escorted by the police out. I later found one of their weaves on the table. 3. I got kicked in the crotch while in the Chucky suit. I'm a girl, and it still hurt. 4. A little girl asked me when the real Chucky was gonna come out because I was too short to be the real Chucky. 5. A mom wanted to show her kid that under the costume, it was just a real person and asked if I would take off Chucky's head to show her daughter. I did, and the kid got even more freaked out thinking that the mouse had engulfed me. I've repressed a lot of the memories, but this is what I can remember. I remember when I worked at that crap hole, I had to take out the coins out of the machines and refill the tickets and clean. Worst thing that happened was not the crap or vomit in the tubes above that the kids crawl in, but the time a kid apparently had to take a crap but didn't want to go to the bathroom cause he would lose all his progress. So he takes a crap right where he is standing. Guess he was 3 tokens deep, so he committed to the game. Well, at one point he loses and runs out of tokens. Guess what he does next? If you guessed, walk away with the crap on the floor like it wasn't his. You are wrong. He freaking grabs his crap and just smears it all over the machine like he is frosting a cake. Full on tantrums while trying to talk crap. Then just wipes their hands on the carpet. Glad I heard this from a coworker. Isn't poop like biohazard territory? Not a former employee, but one time I saw 2 families going at it, throwing punches, cursing and spitting, because one of the kids took some tickets from one of the arcade games that didn't belong to him. Cops had to be called, and both dads got arrested. Having to wear that costume, it's probably one of the most degrading things I've ever had to do. Having to clean the bathrooms, watching children open up the containers with cheese and lick them, and wonder how many times I've used condiments after children have licked them. Catching strep throat several times. Have a group of bored parents test the system of making sure the correct kid leaves with the correct parent. We don't usually check this, because it would be obvious if you're taking a kid cause the kid would be crying. That's usually when I would check, or if the kid didn't look like the parent. Have some lady accuse us of spraying Windex in the salad. Manager told us we couldn't take sick days unless we had a doctor's note, which is against the law. Manager would scream and degrade us, teenagers, in front of whoever. Having to close at the end of the night because we would basically be cleaning up after children. Having to deal with crappy parents. Having parents complain about our attitude because we don't want to be around their crappy kids. Having kids constantly running while you're trying to deliver a pizza. Wheelies. Having to clean the sky tubes after a kid crap in them. Having to work with teenagers who are not the nicest group of people. Mothers dropping their children's diapers on the floor instead of the trash can. I've blocked the rest out. Not the worst. Actually pretty good depending on your perspective. My dad used to manage one back in the mid-80s and would always go through the cash registers at the end of every night and trade in his own pocket change for all of the rare, vintage coinage that teenagers would steal from their parents' stashes. He amassed a great collection of silver coins and other discontinued currency, mercury dimes, buffalo nickels, etc. He still has all of it to this day. I was fired on the spot. Oh wait, you said worse. I worked there for only 4 months in high school before I quit. Everyone was required to wear the mouse costume. Kids would literally beat you up to get your attention. It sucked because I went to a Catholic high school where we wore uniform skirts. Every Monday morning I would go to school covered in bruises. I've been at SEC for 4 years. I'm a cashier. And I remember I had a closing shift one night. Cashiers closed down the cash area, salad bar, beverage bar, and restrooms, at least at my location. I usually leave the restrooms last. So on that night I had finished up everything else and went to clean restrooms. My location is typically very clean, so I had never had an issue with restrooms until that day when I walked into the women's room. I saw what no employee wants to see in the restrooms. It was in the biggest stall. Just imagine poop, but everywhere. On the walls, on the seat, on the floor. It was like semi-solid. Almost liquid-like. On the floor near the drain was more poop, imagine the poop emoji, but in real life. That's what was there. I remember a coworker came in and Snapchatted it for some reason. I have no idea how a human could have accomplished this. I called my manager for backup. He came in and screamed. I screamed. We then cleaned it up begrudgingly. I wore like 5 pairs of gloves at the same time. Took us far longer than usual. I wasn't happy, to say the least. Luckily it has never happened since. Nothing has ever been worse than that. Not an employee, but one time, as a very young kid, my older brother almost got lured out of the building by a stranger with the promise of a bunch of free tickets. I intervened, and everything was fine. Employees were notified. Another time he almost got into a truck to help find a missing puppy. He was a very kidnappable kid, I guess, but I can't seem to get rid of his dumbass. Taking the balls from the ball pit to the car wash in big mesh bags to clean them was never fun. After reading through this, I'm going to be telling my son that he's lucky as crap he got hired on a Domino's before Chuck E. Cheese got back to him. I wore the mouse suit once while working during high school. I was surrounded by an intimidating gang of 10-year-old boys who cornered me by the basketball game. They stomped on my tail and tried to look through my eye holes and yell Chuck E. Cheese isn't real while trying to identify me. I never wore that godforsaken suit again. Damned elementary school has traumatized me for life. That damn suit. I was a game room tech. That part was awesome. I got to play games all day, fix coin jams, etc. However, one day before I was allowed to leave, they decided I had to wear the suit. This was 10 years ago, so it was before the redemption of Chuck E. Cheese. I'm 6 feet, and with the suit on. Here's included I was a giant. You can't really see in the damn thing. Anyway, they lead me out into the main area, and I'm basically lumbering around. It's this horrible experience, because I couldn't see. I kept bumping into things. You'd think this would be the worst part. Nope. It was the kids I scared. They counted. I made 7 children break down, scream, and pull their eyes out. I felt like crap for it. Wasn't much I could do, though. It got better. I finally get to take the suit off and leave. I'm walking to my car and this family is leaving. The little boy is crying. I figured it was due to having to leave. Nah, he's upset because Chuck E. Cheese terrified him. The mom goes, I've heard it. You need to straighten up already. If you don't, I'll take you back in and feed you to that giant mouse. Worst experience. Another time, we had these sketchy fellows come in and try and rob us right before close. Our manager, let's call him O, decided he wasn't going to call the cops and would handle it himself. So, he runs back to the kitchen and grabs the pizza cutter. Basically, it's a giant curved machete. He's trying to be all sneaky, kind of hide it, by keeping it close to his leg. We all thought we were about to get shot, because he wanted to play hero. The guys ended up fleeing. Yeah, I know after seeing him with a giant blade, but it was a pretty terrifying experience for a young high school kid. I used to work for a security company who had been contracted out to a local Chuck E. Cheese franchise. I worked here and there watching the security monitors. Pretty standard gig, but we'd catch some stuff on the monitors. Kids picking on each other was pretty standard. Caught a few kids trying to steal stuff from where the prizes were exchanged for tickets. Once 2 parents got into a full-on fist fight during a kid's birthday party. Every exchange between the 2 dads, I assume, got increasingly hostile until one just sucker punched the other. After a few months they moved me over to the night shift. It paid better, because it was overpass. At first I thought it would just be really boring. Not much going on after hours. Sure, there's a lot of cash going in between birthday parties and families in general being in there buying food and tokens and whatnot. So a robbery is possible, but not likely. When I had my first overnight shift, my supervisor told me to make sure I kept an eye on the power. For some reason it got a little wonky overnight, and I'd probably be operating on the backup generator a lot. If that happened I had to make sure I wasn't using any power I didn't need to. I was pretty mad about that. Couldn't they get that fixed? If someone broke in while I had a light off or something somewhere because it wasn't absolutely necessary, my ass was on the line. I was also told to stay in the security office and keep the doors locked. That seemed counterintuitive to me. Usually you make a few rounds on overnight security. This wasn't my first time doing overnight. Usually when you start in security they stick you on graveyard because no one else wants to deal with it. It was totally mind-numbing. It was so boring, and there was so little to do. My mind kept playing tricks on me. I thought I kept seeing the animatronics in places where they shouldn't have been. A few times the manager had definitely forgotten to put them back into storage, but they always left them in odd places. I figured they were heavy and the manager was just lazy and didn't bother to put the last one or two back. Those things always gave me the heebie-jeebies. I quit that gig after a week. It was so boring, and it was creepy at night between the strange instructions and the animatronics just being left out all over the place. The pay wasn't worth it. Last I heard they had gone through another guy right after me. Had he got injured on the job somehow? The fight between the two dads was probably the most entertaining thing that happened though. I watched someone pick their ass, smell it, and wipe it on the back of some random kid's shirt. I worked at one during high school. It was awesome. We had the old animatronics and a ball pit and horny coworkers. One time a portly young child who exceeded the age range for our single seat Ferris wheel got her arm stuck behind the seat. The machine stopped. She cried. The fire department came. We applied more butter, and she was eventually freed. Oh, worst? Sorry, that was the best. The worst was when my ex's new BF called me on the store's number and threatened to beat me up in the parking lot. That sucked. Everything else was awesome. I heard Beck's loser for the first time ever in that sec kitchen. That one time I chucked cheese all over the mini merry-go-round. I know this going to be buried. I grew up in a small city. Many years ago I worked at a place like Chuckle Cheese's. Dodging go-karts and cleaning up child puke was terrible. I very passively met a wonderful person. Neither of us realized how important it was. It's about 8 years later. We are getting married in 3 weeks. As terrible as it was, best thing I could have done. Not an employee but a customer. 6-year-old me was running around when I noticed this kid, maybe 4 years old, sitting up against one of the arcade machines looking dazed and like he had been crying for a while. I get a closer look and see he has a hole in his forehead. I'm talking like an inch wide hole that went down to his skull. Some streams of blood pouring down over his eyes. I remember panicking and asking where his parents were. He just sat there slack-jawed, and I freaked out. I picked him up best I could and took him to our table. My parents were like, "Why did you bring this child over here? Oh my god." Employees were summoned and they took the kid to find his parents. To this day I have no idea what happened to cause that to the kid. I'm assuming he was running around like me and must ran into a corner somewhere hard. Seeing little bits of meat and exposed skull has stuck with me. I can actually answer this one. The amount of kids that put jello in their mouths and spit it back out at the salad bar is incredible. It's also not uncommon for a kid to throw up in the sky tubes or pee down a slide. But the best one I saw during my time there was a girl maybe 4 years old eat her body weight in pizza and soda then run around for an hour. At one point she got very pale and puked more than I've seen any grown man puke in my life. Her mom picked her up and started sprinting to the bathroom like an Alabama running back. The girl just kept puking and left a decent trail the entire route to the bathroom. 10/10ths would watch again. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.